in this video, we will be talking all about this Classworks tab and what options you have here. So when you look on the left-hand side of this menu, you'll see all the topics that I've created. So one thing I really want to talk about is the importance of organizing your Classworks page by topics, just to make your content easy for your students to find. One complaint I heard a lot during distance learning back in the spring was that students are complaining they can't find assignments. So we just have to do a more organized job of putting those assignments in a place that makes it easy for students to find. Now, the students do have, I'm going to show you my son in my Google Classroom. They do have in this menu this to-do option, and it is going to show everything that he has to do. Now, these are all old assignments that I've made for trainings, and then he has this done option too, and these are all things that I turned in for him just for training purposes. So that teaching your students about this to-do menu is going to be really helpful for them to see, what they've completed and what's new and what they haven't completed. And then remember, you also have in your menu this to review option. And it tells you everything that you need to grade and return to students and everything that you have already graded and returned to students. So this menu here, this main menu, is the same as what it was in the stream. There's nothing different here from what we saw in the stream. So under this create menu, I've got the options of an assignment, a Kami assignment, which we'll talk about when we talk about these extensions up at the top, because this is one of my extensions right here. A quiz assignment, a question, material, reuse, post, and topic. So we're just going to start out and move from the top to the bottom. So assignment is just like anything that you would hand out for your students in class. There are so many websites that are already integrated with Google Classroom, and you can push assignments out from those platforms. IXL, you've got Newsela, which is one of my very favorites for really high interest reading material for students that is already organized by Lexile level. So you can have students reading the same article that's written in different Lexile levels so that you can modify for your students who are above grade level, on grade level, or working below grade level, but they're all reading the same content, just a different readability level. There are so many more out there. Edulastic is really nicely integrated with Google Classroom. So you don't have to just be creating content on your own and assigning it. You can also be using all of those other platforms that are already integrated with Google Classroom, and you can be pushing out assignments from those platforms as well. But for our purposes, we're just going to go ahead and talk about, you've been doing a unit of study on, let's say, Romeo and Juliet, and you want your students to write an essay about Romeo and Juliet. So we're going to give our essay a title. Be as explicit as you want with your instructions so that you don't have a lot of questions. Your students can just refer back to this instructions section and read what you said. So I can add lots of options here, a YouTube video, a template that I've created for my Drive, a link to a website where I want them to research, other content for my Google Drive, or if I haven't already created a file as a template, I can just go to create, and they're going to be typing in a doc. So now I can specify in my Google Doc what I want my students to do. So if I want this to have a word limit or whatever, I could say, write a 500-word essay. Now students are going to do all their writing here. The most important thing about that is that right now students can only view this file. So every student, let's say you have 20 of them in your class, can open this and look at it, but they can't do anything to it. So it'd be sort of similar to you projecting an image of a piece of paper up on your smartboard. They can only look at it, but they can't do anything to it yet. They can just see it. You can let students edit the file, but that file is singular here, so it means just one. So students, multiple, can edit one file. So you've got 20 students all editing the same file. That's not what we want for something like this. Now, if this were a collaborative piece of work and 2 students were going to work on it together, I can say, I'm going to give 2 students this, and I'm going to just select those students. So John and Lauren are going to work on this together. So this is a great time for you to be able to differentiate. If you've got students with modifications, you can make this assignment just for them. And they're the only ones who will see it, are the 2 students that you're assigning it to. So if you have, say, 5 students who have modifications or accommodations according to an IEP or a 504, you can make this assignment for them and they'll see it. Now, they don't know who else can see it necessarily, but in that case, I would do make a copy for each student. Now, John and Lauren are each going to get a copy of this, but it's not going to be the same copy. Here, if it was a collaborative assignment, both students are working on one file. Here, it's not a collaborative assignment. Each student is getting his or her own copy. Or you can come in and you can say, this is for all students. And if that's the case, unless it's a collaborative Google Sheet or something where all your students are going to be entering data or information into one Google Sheet, you'll want to go ahead and just make a copy for each student, just like you would if you took a hard copy of a black line and took it down to the copier and made a copy for each student. That's what we want to do here too. I can assign this a point value. I can customize that point value, or I can say this is not a graded assignment. I can even assign it right here to more than one class. So if I have 5 sections of English or whatever, I can assign it to all 5 sections at the same time, or I can just assign it to one class. I can give it a due date, and this is where we have that really nice Google Calendar integration. So I can say this is going to be due on August the 14th. Now it's going to be on their Google Calendar that they have this assignment, and it's due Friday, August the 14th. Now, this is probably the most important thing, is this topic situation, which was one of our options back. We could create a topic. You can create it from that create menu, or you can create it from within an individual assignment. There are several different ways that you can organize topics. You could do a specific day. So like have a topic called today, and that's going to be all of today's work. So whatever I put in today is going to be just an assignment I've made today. Then I'm going to have to move all of those assignments to a different topic tomorrow when I'm ready to post new content in today. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about topics. I can attach a rubric here, which these are just super intuitive, very easy feature. You can make one and then you can reuse it from essay to essay or assignment to assignment. You can create it from right within this assignment and then reuse it later, or you can import one that you found on the internet or through one that you've created in Google Sheets. I just want to show you the creation process real quick. So simple. So let's say I want this to be their mechanics. And I am going to just give it a description. So proper capitalization and punctuation. Now I just like a 4, 3, 2, 1 scale. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I give each of these a title. So you will be much more creative with these titles than I am. Just for this purpose, I'm going to go with below basic, basic, proficient, and advanced. And then I'm going to give each one a title. Like this one had many mistakes in capitalization and punctuation. You will be much more thorough at this than I'm being right now, I'm sure. Okay, now I can go in and I can add further criteria if I want to. This 3 dots menu is always my friend that I can duplicate, delete. I can move if I want all of my descriptors to be like my level title and my points to be the same, I could just come in and I could duplicate this one and then just change, like, instead of mechanics, it's going to be, some other criterion title. So right now I'm just going to save this. So this, they have a possible 4 points total on that rubric. So now it's here, it's connected. I can reuse that again in the future if I want to. Your last option right here is this check plagiarism or originality. This can only run 3 times per Google Classroom. So if you plan on keeping this classroom open for a whole year, you can only do this 3 times for the whole year. A lot of teachers really like this feature, and so they make a new Google Classroom after the first semester is over so that they can run it 3 more times for a total of 6 for this year. But what this is a plagiarism checker. It's going to search all web content for chunks of text that are cross-referenced with web content from your student's essay, and it's going to let your students know if they have any uncited information in this essay that they need to go back and cite. So too much of this content is from this website and it's uncited. So while it is a tool for you to check your students' plagiarism, it's really more of a tool for your students to see that they have a big chunk of content that's not properly cited. So they get a report before they submit, I believe, that lets them know you need to cite this text. So it's really nice. It's going to tell you you can only enable this report 3 times per class. So you are just going to have to be selective about which assignments you want to run this on. So I want to show you a few things over here in Google Docs before I make this assignment. It's got some really nice features. First of all, your students can do searches from right within their Google Doc. They don't have to go to Google anymore to do a search. So I can search the web from here. So this is Romeo and Juliet. So now I can look at web content right from here. And if they end up using any of the information from here, it's automatically going to cite it for them as a footnote, which is so nice. Also, if it's got a word count under tools, you've got this word count option. I can display word count while typing. I think this would be really handy for college, upcoming college seniors who are going to, or high school seniors who have to write scholarship essays that have like a 500 word limit. They can keep track of where they are on their screen while they're typing, which is so nice for them. Okay. So back here, I've got some options now before I assign this content. I can either assign it, I can schedule it to assign at a later time or date, or I can save it as a draft or just discard it altogether. So if I schedule it, your students won't see it until the time and date that you specify for it to release. So if you're going to have a sub on Monday and you want your first assignment to roll out at 8:10, you can do that. And this prevents students from having access and completing work before you're ready for them to have access to it. Right now, I'm just going to go with assign, and it's going to assign for me. And I want to show you what this looks like on the student end, which is why I put my kids in my Google Classroom. So here under classwork, under today, this is the assignment that I just created, this Romeo and Juliet essay. When he clicks on it, he can view the rubric and he can open up the assignment so that he can start typing on it. So he's got, here's what he has to work on. This is your work. So it made a copy for him and it already put his name on it. He can add or create content to go with it. He can't view the rubric right within this document. He's going to have to kind of toggle between looking at the rubric here and going back and making sure so that your student knows how they can achieve the maximum score on this, but they can't view it in here. So that's what it's going to look like. When he's all finished, let me just go ahead and submit this for him. So I'm going to hit turn in. Got to teach your students the difference between that turn in and share. They're not, it's shared between only John and myself right now. You don't want them just to share it back to you because it's not going to mark it done in their Google Classroom. You're going to want him to turn it in. So it says one attachment will be submitted for this assignment. I click turn in. And now he can't make any more modifications, edits, revisions to this assignment without unsubmitting it. So I'm going to grade it now from my end and I can return it to John and then he'll have editing access again. But right now, all he can do is just look at his work. He can't make any further changes to it after he's turned it in. He has to request edit access or unsubmit from his end in order to do that. So when I go over here to this to-do menu, done, he just finished this Romeo and Juliet essay and it's turned in. Okay. So now I can see on my end that John has turned it in, but Luke and Lauren have it assigned and they haven't finished it yet. So I can go in and I even have some little thumbnails. Some teachers prefer to grade it within their Google Drive folder that was created for this Google Classroom, or you can grade it right from within your Google Classroom. So it says it's turned in. I have my rubric here so that I can take a look. Well, John didn't have any mistakes with capitalization and punctuation. Everything was correct. So I can assign him a score for that and it's automatically going to grade that. And then I can add private comments to him. I also have this option of this nice comment bank right here. So when I go to make a comment on John's work, I want to say, you know what, this is not enough content. He did not give me enough content to be able to judge his writing ability. So I can go in and I can, I have this comment bank over here to the right. I've got the option of just making a copy of this, or I can type a hashtag that's Shift3, and these comments come up from my comment bank, and I can say, you know, whatever it is that I want to say. So please elaborate. And I'm going to push that comment. Now I can return it to him, or I can batch return this. If all my students have returned or submitted their work and I'm going to go through, I can go through and I can toggle through right here. So if I have 3 students in this class, I can see what every single student has done on this assignment. I can see she hasn't started yet. I can add a comment to her now. I can say, do you need help getting started on this assignment? I can comment that to her. If I want that to be sent to her in an email, because sometimes students don't see that I've commented something. This is how I'm going to do that. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you a trick. I can go to doc.new and it automatically is going to open a new doc for me. I'm going to type in her email address. Let's see what her email address is. Lauren Eckert, Lauren.Eckert25 at Greenwood. Control A will highlight that, Control C copies it, and then I'm just going to paste it into that assignment where I'm giving her some feedback. Go back to where I was. Here we go. If I put her email address in there with a hashtag in the front, I'm going to directly send that in an email to her. Try that one more time just to make sure that's going to work. Okay, so now it's going to send an email directly to her, letting her know that I have posted an assignment to her, or a comment. So that's going to email her with that. Okay, So I can toggle through. I can do the same thing with Luke's assignment. And then if I can't return it to him yet because he hasn't opened it and he hasn't started it, but I can return John's because he has completed his assignment. So now I can see that John has 100 on this. Now that I've returned it to John, if there were any edits that I wanted him to make, like I said, please elaborate on this. This is not enough content. If I had returned it to him and left it ungraded, he could make those revisions and then resubmit it. Okay, let's get back to our Google Classroom. Our next option under assignment, that's now I have the Kami extension installed. What that does is it allows you to take a PDF and it allows your students or yourself to be able to annotate or comment directly on that PDF. So I have this extension installed. If my students have this extension installed and I assign a PDF to them, they can add text boxes, they can highlight on it. They've got several different options. There's a free version and a paid version. The free version has always done everything that I needed it to do and more. I've never paid for it, but it is a good service if you want your students to be able to either annotate or add text boxes, like answer boxes, to a PDF. So the next one we're going to talk about is the quiz assignment, and that integrates Google Forms. So I'm just going to show you forms.google.com. You can also access that from your Drive under the More menu. So this is all the quizzes that I've ever created, mostly for training purposes. So a lot of them are blank. I've got the option here to do a quiz or just like a survey. So Google Forms can be data collection. I've had my students create Google Forms before when we were talking about statistics and probability and data analysis. I have parents fill one out at open house when I was a classroom teacher or at parent-teacher conferences to collect their contact information so that I would then have that in a spreadsheet all the time. So back here in our sandbox, it already, because I created a quiz or a test assignment, it's already got this blank quiz for me. So this is going to be a Romeo and Juliet quiz. I can give instructions. I can choose, which classes this is going to be assigned to and which students specifically are going to receive it, or are all students going to receive it. I can have it ungraded or worth any certain amount of points. So it could be worth, whatever amount of points I designate. We're going to give it a due date so that it appears in their Google Calendar. And then we're going to assign it to that today topic because it's for today. I'm not going to need a rubric for this one because I'm going to show you how to make this self-grading, which is one of the most fantastic features of these Google Forms. Just like with any other assignment, I can add videos or Drive content or a link to a website or whatever. I can create, a doc or a Google Sheet or whatever if they need something to go with this. In this case, it's just going to be an assessment over their reading on Romeo and Juliet. If we are in person and they are taking this at school on a managed Chromebook only, so that is a Chromebook that is provided by your school district that is controlled by your tech department. You can turn on this locked quiz mode, and what that's going to do is prevent students from being able to open new tabs during a quiz. So this feature came about because teachers were saying, I'm giving a quiz, my students are opening a new tab, they're researching an answer during the quiz. I don't want them to be able to do that. So Google put this safeguard in place so that if they're at school face-to-face, you can turn this on and it prevents them completely from opening a new tab or a new browsing window altogether on a managed Chromebook. So this does not work on laptops. It doesn't work on desktops. It only works for managed Chromebooks. So when I click on this, because it's a blank quiz right now, I'm just going to go here and this is where I'm going to add all of my questions. Oh, I'm going to have to wrap this one up. So I'm going to make this Romeo and Juliet quiz. So I made this the Romeo and Juliet quiz. I can give this form a description if I wish to. And then it's got my first question. For me, my first question is always first name. And my second question is always last name. So that was already required. I do want to show you here in your More menu. It says Preferences, and it's got this little settings cog. When I click that, it says Make Questions Required. So historically, what I found is that first question isn't going to be required for whatever reason, and I have to toggle that on. But all questions thereafter, because this is a universal settings menu for Google Forms, I have made those. I've checked this to make all questions required. I don't want my students to be able to submit if they haven't answered all the questions. If there is some sort of optional question, like at the end, that's I don't want to make required, then I'm just going to go through and I'm going to toggle that off. So now I can start adding my questions. You're going to see that this is going to default to whatever type of question Google thinks that I'm asking. So if I said, how do you feel about Romeo? It knows that I want this to be a multiple choice question. So now this was kind of an opinion question, but if this were a realistic question, I would go in and I would make an answer key. Oh, and I meant to set a point value on that as well. So now this is the correct answer and it's worth 1 point. So this is that really super nice self-grading aspect of Google Forms that's going to save you a lot of time. So question 2, let's say, how do you think this story will end? And it defaulted to paragraph. It thinks that I want my students to either write a paragraph there or do like a short answer. Now, I'm not going to add a short answer text to my answer key because otherwise students are going to have to put in exactly what I put in. So I'm going to make this worth 1 point. I'm not going to add a correct answer because I'm going to be grading this manually. So I'm going to hit done. Now I'm ready to just go ahead and assign this. So since I created it from back here, it's not going to be a blank quiz anymore. When I assign it, it is going to be the quiz that I just created in Google Forms. So now let's look at that from John's end. Let's look at that even from John's to-do menu. Let's see. Oh, there it is. It's the Romeo and Juliet quiz, and it's going to be due pretty soon. So, oops, it may not have updated yet. That's an old one. Sometimes there's a little lag in the code, and we just have to wait a minute for it to populate properly. Stream was updated. So here's that quiz that I just created. Now he's going to go in and answer it and submit it. All right, so let's go in now. Let's see. It says that he only made a 50%, and that's because the teacher has not graded this one yet. So if you have students like my students were, they would come up if we were in person and say, it says I only got 1 correct, and I know I answered that second one correct. So here's how we can kind of navigate that. So in your Google form, here's the quiz. In my settings menu for this Google form, this is a quiz. So I need to tell, do I want to release grade immediately or do I want to release it after I've graded an open response? So for this purpose, I should have checked, I want to release my score to my students later after I've manually reviewed it. If you've got it set to immediately, like if it was all multiple choice and you wanted your students to get their grade immediately upon submitting that form. Do you want them to see their missed questions? Do you want them to see what those correct answers were? And do you want them to know what the point values were? Whether we're in person or we are on distance learning, I don't want my students to see the questions they missed or their correct answers, because then they can share that information with periods that have not taken this quiz yet, or other students in the class who haven't submitted their quiz, especially, if they're sitting behind someone who just submits, they're able to see what those answers were. So if you're releasing it immediately, you probably just want them to see their score, but not these two options. So once I click save, now if I go in and I take this quiz, let's see, it's not going to release those for Lauren. Let's see. Well, there we go. Now, when I submit that for her, it is not going to show her anything yet. Nope, I lied about that. It'll work on your end. No worries there. Okay. So now I need to go in. I can see which students have submitted it. I can see what their answers were. And I can go in at the question level. And I need to score this one manually. So I want to say, John said it would end badly. I'm going to just go ahead and give him credit for that. I'm going to give her credit for that. And then I can release these scores to them. I can release one at a time or all at a time, and it's going to send them an email releasing their scores. Okay. Get back here to my sandbox. So the next option is a question. This is can be a multiple choice question or just a short answer. Students are going to be able to see each other's answers and reply to each other. So this is kind of like if you've done any graduate level work and you were online and you had to post to a discussion board and you had to reply to three classmates. This is kind of that same feel. So I could do that here. I can make it short answer or multiple choice. I can assign it just to specific students. So all the same options that you had, whether you were going to schedule it, ask it now, all of those things are options. And this can also just be a survey. Does anybody need help with anything? And then they can answer, they can reply to each other. You can also toggle off that option for them to be able to reply to each other. And then I've got this materials section. So on materials, this is going to be things like your class syllabus. It's going to be material that it's going to span, a quarter or a semester or a year that you want to know this is important material that you're going to be accessing time and again. And then you have this nice option to reuse a post. So if you've made a post in another classroom this year, or you've made a post in an archived class from a previous year, or you are a co-teacher in a Google Classroom that has created an assignment and you want to use that assignment for your own Google Classroom, we're going to do that from here. So it's going to ask you which class you want to select that from, and you're going to choose which classroom and which assignment you want to reuse. And it's going to create all new copies of that assignment for your Google Classroom. So if I had the same classes last year that I have this year, as far as what I'm teaching, I can go in and I can reuse a post from last year as an assignment for this year. And then we have this topic option. And we talked about the creation of a topic from within your assignment, but you can also just do it here. So this topic is going to be called yesterday And I'm just going to move everything that was done from today into yesterday's tomorrow. That was a lot of confusion there. This is not going to post on the students end until you have put something under this topic. So that's all of our options for creating here within the Classworks tab. If you have further questions about this, remember that you can access all of these training materials here on class. Let me go back. Here we go. bit.ly/GC now what. And I have done the best job that I could of taking screenshots of all that we have just talked about and putting those screenshots into this presentation for you so that you can access it a month from now when you're in the thick of it and you can't remember what we talked about in this video. You can always just go back and you can go through these slides, and there are screenshots of everything that we've done here. I've also added all of these assignment templates in this bit.ly link for this presentation. So these are all sorts of things that you could go ahead and find online to make an assignment. So Teachers Pay Teachers just has a ton of options for Google templates that have already been created. You want your students to do a timeline of your Romeo and Juliet. There are all sorts of timelines already created. So all this content that you're going to be pushing out through Google Classroom isn't necessarily content that you have had to spend time creating. There are so many free resources out there. This Control-Alt-Achieve has tons of free templates for you. Ditch That Textbook has these amazing graphic organizer templates. Let me just go ahead and show those to you. You can open those all up in your Google Drive and you can make yourself a copy of them, and then you can put that copy into, that's not a dead link, it's just not opening for whatever reason. I've been on that link within the past week. But you can take all of these resources that you've either purchased and vetted properly or you have found online that are free, and you can make yourself a copy of those and you can assign those through your Google Classroom. Let's see one more time if that will work. Yeah, I don't know why it worked there and not there. It was the same link. So it says get the Google Drawings template. So now it's opened up this folder and I can make myself a copy of these so that I can go in and I can assign these through my Google Classroom. And these are amazing. So Frayer models, timelines, character maps. There are 25 of them. I also linked some that were specifically for K2 from Ditch That Textbook. That's Matt Miller. He's an amazing Google guru. This is Eric Kurtz with Control-Alt-Achieve. He is fantastic. They have all sorts of templates that are available for you and are free.